In the last video, we talked about the PlayStation 5, so of course, you knew that a video on this one was coming next. Hello! Welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and of course, we are talking about the release of the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, the new Xbox consoles, which are being released very, very shortly. And if you're watching this, you'll probably already have one on pre-order, or it could be on its way. Who knows, it could be very close, but that's what we have to do to look at the new consoles. We have to go back through its life, all the way back to the original Xbox, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. How did we get here? You see, to truly appreciate what we have to go back and understand where this all came from. And this even started before the original Xbox. More specifically, the video game Doom. Yes, that Doom. The Doom that was pretty much on almost every single computer at the time and, well, was a massive success. But why Doom? Why are we starting here? Microsoft worked closely to develop DirectX technology, which was used in pretty much most of the Windows 95 machines. The purpose was to allow the handling of and development of video games. The application and programming interfaces, or APIs, effectively created the blueprint for a gaming revolution. The game Doom would form a foundation for Microsoft Gaming, and eventually they would look to create their own dedicated games console, being the original Xbox. What I found amazing was an interview I found when Bill Gates was doing the promotion for Windows 95 and DirectX, where in the video they're playing Doom, and the Doom guy, the character you play as, is revealed to be Bill Gates, and he's there just holding his shotgun, doing what he does and basically saying why Doom is the best game. So that's pretty cool in my books, something that I didn't know. Anyway, the transition into an actual console came from a conversation between Otto Burks and Ted Hayes at Microsoft. The conversations naturally led to looking at the console market, looking at it through the lens of business, technology, and the developer ecosystem. You know, at that time, Sony was in its ascendancy. PlayStation was the hot new thing. The idea initially wasn't to just jump straight into making a console. They wanted to have a hybrid approach. They wanted something which resembled the consoles we see today, but also that of a computer. So, the best of both worlds. This led to the release of the absolute unit, the Xbox, and I had this console as a kid, and I remember when my brother came in and showed it me, I couldn't believe my eyes, and I had no idea what I was looking at. It was just a massive green and black box. However, the game that came with it, which I think most people can probably agree with is an amazing first game to play, was Halo Combat Evolved. And honestly, this game changed everything. It was phenomenal, and we must have sat there and played Halo all day and all night for probably about 3 days straight because we'd loved it, and we could play co-op as well, so I just have a lot of cherished memories of those times. The original Xbox console was released in North America on the 15th of November 2001, the 22nd of February 2002 in Japan, and on the 14th of March 2002 in Australia and Europe. And the other thing I remember is how big and chunky those controllers were. I could barely get my hand around it, especially when I was younger. I was like having to reach across the controller just to hit buttons. It's just those little things that just stick with you. And compared to controllers now, which are so ergonomically friendly and fit just right, that console, I mean, they could have probably done a bit of a better job with those controllers. They were big. Unnecessarily big, some might say. Other such notable titles on the console were Halo 2, Need for Speed Most Wanted, Fable, GTA, Forza, Jet Set Radio Future, and so many more games. And at the time of its release, it was a direct competitor to the PlayStation 2 and the Sega Dreamcast, so really, its only competitor was the PlayStation 2. The console on its release did pretty well, obviously not quite as well as the PlayStation 2, but it stood its own. One of the big parts of the original Xbox was the release of Xbox Live, the online gaming platform a year after its release, and it was pretty popular. And really, that kind of paved the way for the console we all pretty much owned, the second generation of Xbox console, the Xbox 360. And oh boy, what a console this was. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I've still got mine somewhere. It's hidden away in a box somewhere, so I don't really want to have to dig it out. But it's just one of those things where it was such a big part of your childhood, you can't get rid of it. The Xbox 360 was released as the successor of the original Xbox in November 2005. With HD graphics and a new and improved Xbox Live aspect, this allowed players to jump in and experience a new step in online gaming. Competing with the likes of the PS3 and the Nintendo Wii, it really stood out, and it was competitively priced, it was very much capable, and it was very, very popular. The console even came with a fantastic array of games, with such classics as Halo 3, the various COD games, Fallout 3, GTA, Red Dead Redemption, Gears of War, and so many more. They also released the Kinect, but we don't really talk about that. It was around this time also that Microsoft acquired Mojang. Mojang, the company that own Minecraft. And yes, that is pretty much the most popular game of all time. In fact, it's the best-selling game of all time. So they probably did a smart there, trying to get it as an early exclusive for their own consoles. The best game of all time, apart from Truck Simulator, of course. The Xbox 360 wasn't the only console in the generation to be released, however, as in 2010, they decided to release an Xbox Slimline version, which was basically just a redesigned Xbox 360 with a much bigger hard drive, at a cheaper price. So this gave more people more reason to get it. Due to the fact that the Xbox 360 was already running loops around PS3, this only cemented the fact that the 360 was clearly the king of this console generation. Soon after, in 2013, the next edition of the 360 was released, called the Xbox 360e. The case looking very similar to a possible upcoming console, and with the removal of some ports, the console was relatively similar to the Xbox 360s. Don't really know why people bought this though, as a new console was just on the horizon. Yes, here comes the Xbox One, the console that was going to lead up after the 360, and it had a lot of expectations. And also, strangely enough, called the Xbox One rather than the Xbox 3 or something like that, and I can only assume the reason for it is because the PlayStation was going to be called the PlayStation 4. So if they were going to call it the Xbox 3rd edition or something like that, even though it's technically not a step down, people would just see it that it's one number less, meaning that they should probably go for the PS4, which, I mean, given what happened, it probably really didn't make much difference anyway, because it didn't really do that well. I mean, no, I lie. It did okay. It did okay. But there is a clear winner in this generation, and it certainly wasn't the Xbox One. An incredibly inventive name for a games console, this was released on the 22nd of November 2013 in North America, as the successor to the Xbox 360. The console's competitors were the PS4 and the Wii U. So, really, its only competitor was the PS4. Look, I already know I've made that joke in the previous video, but this is mainly just to cement the fact that the Wii U didn't stand a chance. With the incredibly successful console generation of the Xbox 360, you would have thought that Microsoft were in a good place to release their next console. Well, they probably would have been if they didn't make a series of monumental cock-ups along the way. On the release of the console, they made some rather controversial decisions. One of the big ones was a DRM restriction, which required people to be online playing the games at all times, meaning that if you just wanted to play an offline game or wanted to go somewhere without internet, you would be severely hindered, mainly because of the fact that you needed to be connected online at all times, which really just didn't sit well with consumers. It was a very anti-consumer move. This implementation of digital rights management practices, or DRM, meant that owners, although being able to purchase games digitally or physically, had the ability to access games in the library only tied to their gamer tag, and meant that you had to be online periodically. Effectively, what they said was if you don't connect online within a 24-hour period, you couldn't play your games. Yes, you couldn't play any game on the console, which people were pretty pissed. People were so pissed, in fact, they decided to go online and voice their opinions. Oh, and also buy the PS4 instead. Following this very controversial announcement, Sony did the big balls thing and came out with a hilarious video basically showing how game sharing on their console would work compared to that of the Xbox. Instead of having this digital rights management and having to be online and not being able to share games, what they did instead was they showed a video of one man holding a physical copy of a game, and to give it to his friend, he literally gave it to his friend. And yeah, that was like a big kick in the balls, because not only was it funny, but it was true. And this was something that gamers had been used to since the dawn of games. And really, yeah, you fucked up Microsoft. This, of course, being a swift kick in the bollocks to Microsoft, clarified this position and came out with a statement after all of this kicked off. In order to save face, they said the following: "The thing I want to be super explicit about, because I do think people are worried about, is once we made the decision to go digital disc security, we're not unwinding that decision. We're committed to the physical disc. We're committed to trading and loaning. This is my official, we're not going back on that. I don't want anybody to think that we got them, and then tomorrow I'm going to go back to the old stuff, because that's not going to happen." The practice, of course, would have a massive impact on people who wanted to either purchase or sell secondhand games. With fierce criticism from fans alike, they very quickly rolled this back and said, "Oh, actually, we're not doing this anymore." But too little, too late. This wasn't really a very good start for Microsoft's release of the new console, but just to add insult to injury, they tried to make the Kinect a mandatory part of the console, which 9 people out of 10 didn't give a shit about, meaning that people didn't want to have this additional piece of hardware which they'd never use, effectively increasing the price of the console unnecessarily. And Microsoft were also very quick to release a version of the console without the Kinect, which is the one I bought because I ain't buying the console with the Kinect. I'd rather wait and get one without it, because what's the point? Now, despite the fact that a lot of backtracking had been done, the damage was evident. As PlayStation sales rocketed on the 13th of June 2016, Microsoft announced the Xbox One S, which was redesigned to be smaller and have 4K capability with streaming and HD Blu-ray, with a higher end version being announced in 2017 for the Xbox One X. It's funny how things change, where on the previous generation the 360 was king, and just with the release of a single console and a few bad decisions, this completely flips on its head, and the PS4 was now very, very much outperforming the Xbox One. I mean, it had some alright exclusive titles, the Halo games at a push, Cuphead, Ori and the Blind Forest, Gears 5, Sea of Thieves, probably something else I forgot there, but honestly, there wasn't any massive standout titles unlike the PS4 that had a lot of great games. So this, and alongside all the previous bad decisions, didn't really set them up very well. The big problem that Xbox had was they didn't have many first-party titles or exclusives for the console, meaning that there wasn't really a reason to get an Xbox unless you liked Halo or Gears of War. However, despite all this doesn't mean that the Xbox One didn't do well. It sold well, just obviously not as well as its main competitor. And they even picked up a lot of the slack later on in the console generation with the release of Xbox Game Pass, a subscription service model where people would pay a set amount a month and they have access to a huge library of games that they can pretty much play whenever they want. And honestly, I think it's a fantastic idea. It really wouldn't surprise me if this is going to be the future of gaming, where the actual purchase of individual games is next to none and people would just, very much like Netflix, get a subscription and just have access to the title of games. This new marketing strategy by Microsoft has proven to be quite successful and has set them off on a very good direction for the release of the new consoles, being the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, the new consoles which are coming very, very soon. With launch games coming such as Scorn, The Ascent, Second Extinction, and of course, Halo Infinite, you can tell I'm a fanboy, can't you? Actually, what I just realised was I wrote this script prior to the announcement of Halo being delayed, so yes, it's not a launch game, it's next year, which is a bit annoying, but at least we know it's around the corner, so hopefully it won't be too long. And, well, that's where we are. The release of the consoles is just around the corner, and we only have to wait and see who's going to come out on top. And yes, I'm aware that Microsoft have come out and said that PlayStation aren't their main competitor. They've basically said that with the direction they're taking the business, they are looking at businesses like Amazon, etc., etc. However, we all know deep inside, that the true fight is between PlayStation and Xbox. Much like other video game rivalries before it, like Mario and Sonic, someone has to come out on top, and I guess it's only going to be a matter of time until we find out who that may be. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas as to what videos you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. Right, now we've done a video on both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. Nintendo Switch? No. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.